On my first trip to the High Stakes Poker Studios, I played too nitty and got kicked out of the game.
How do you spell nit?
P-H-I-L.
Did they hear that, Phil?
I heard that.
On my second trip, I played loose and splashy, and I lost about $400,000.
Oh my God, Clay Aiken went for it. His timing is bad.
I got in trouble. Now I get the opportunity to redeem myself with a third trip.
Is there a sense of coming back for redemption here?
A little bit. More of like a fear of a repeat performance.
Will I step up and finally put my best foot forward?
Did they hear that, Phil?
I heard that.
Let's find out.
Ace-king suited for Klein. And two queens for Phil Laak.
In this first hand, I face an early position raise from Bill Klein to 3,000, a call from Phil Laak. I'm on the button with Queen 10 offsuit, and I decided to 3-bet to 14,000. So my loose and splashy days are not behind me just yet. Let's see how it goes.
Winner, it will be.
If he starts winning,
if he gets stuck, he won't say a word.
If he gets stuck, he just sits there.
Yeah, I have to have talking chips.
Get him, Bill.
There's one thing about it. I bet it's not as slow as it was the day before yesterday.
No, it won't be. Wow, I like it.
Good luck,
Is this
Doctor.
fifth? Is this the fifth hand?
Klein and Laak both opting to call. Three-way to the flop.
Interestingly, both players just call. I would have expected one of my opponents to 4-bet here with the hands that they held. Bill Klein under the gun with ace-king suited against my aggressive image, squeezing. And as we can see, I had Queen 10 off. But once he doesn't, and Phil Laak slow plays by calling the first open raise, I thought that now he would spring the trap and back raise 4-bet. But both players just call and allow me to see a flop.
Good flop for Laak.
He's really slow, right? On TV.
Check.
Terrible.
I recognize that flop, Antonio, when I had the 7-8 of clubs.
As the young folks say, Galfond C-bets.
7-8 of spades, how about pocket nines?
7-8 of clubs, huh?
How about pocket nines?
Turbo muck
How'd you know?
for Klein.
How does this guy know that?
I didn't tell him.
Do you really have nines?
Yeah.
How much?
See, you catch them lying.
I mean, but that's amazing if he didn't know. You know what we're talking
And
about?
Laak flat.
I was here.
And that'll do it for the young person
You
speak.
bet $40,000 on
The flop comes down 6-5-4 rainbow. Both my opponents check to me, and I decided to c-bet 17,000 into 44,000. Now, this is a flop on which I would expect one of them to lead into me at least some of the time if they really connected with it. You know, their ranges contain a lot of pocket pairs that are lower. Mine does not so much. So if they flopped a set, even if they flopped a hand like 7-7 for the overpair plus open-ender, I thought that I would see some leads, not always. This c-bet is obviously loose, but I unblock an ace, which is good. I wasn't expecting ace-king, but hands like ace-jack, ace-10 can fold, ace-9 suited, etc. Obviously king-jack, which I unblock, can fold. So I fire out this bet and hope something good happens, and something good does happen. Bill Klein folds his ace-king, which is ahead of me, but of course Phil Laak calls with his queens, which had me in very rough shape.
the end.
Senior moment.
3 of club on the river.
8 of clubs makes the straight a stronger possibility.
You thought I was going to raise it and then dog it. Against most
That's
people.
big heart.
I actually decided I was going to represent a club if it came, and then I chickened out.
Well, that wouldn't have worked.
What are you going to call me with 2 nines?
No, I wouldn't have. But if I'd have had what I was
Would you have
supposed to
called
have,
with
I
7-8?
would've dogged it. I would have,
If I
yeah.
shipped the river?
Yeah.
Tell you what, now I bluff that one.
Bold move by Galfond.
Yeah.
Mr. Galfond. Oh, 4, 5, 6, 8. What do you got, ace-2 of clubs or something?
We head to the 8 of clubs turn, and Phil Laak checks to me. Now, this is an interesting spot where I obviously have some very strong hands like aces and kings in my 3-betting range, but I also have some speculative hands like 7-8, 6-7. I have ace-7. I have a lot of low suited stuff or high-low suited stuff. And so I felt like despite the fact that I was representing a high card range, I actually could represent this board fairly well. Combine that with the fact that I thought Phil might lead the turn sometimes, and as I said, might have led the flop sometimes with a hand that really connected with this board, I thought it was reasonably likely that he had a pocket pair that was higher than the board. 9s, 10s, jacks. Didn't quite expect queens, but I thought they could be in there. He also could have called with a hand like ace-5 suited, and all of those hands are really uncomfortable on this 8 of clubs turn. Now, if I bet the turn and get called, I think I probably need to shut down with a hand like this unless the river gets scary enough. But before I do that, I decide to fire out another bluff, $53,000 into this $78,000 pot. Phil Laak is in a tough spot here. I mean, we can see he has me crushed, but I am representing a hand better than his hand, and he doesn't have many outs to improve. And further, his range might look to him like it connects really hard with this board, because it kind of does, if not for the fact that I felt he would lead the flop or lead the turn with some of those stronger parts of that range.
53. So if you got it, you're going to bet like 180 on the river. Felt me on the second hand. If you don't have it, you win, kid.
He bluffs you, kid.
I flopped the set.
100%?
You flipped set?
Not 100, but 85.
Good raise pre-flop.
He
bluff me?
He just knows you can't call. I mean, he's smart.
I'll tell you after. I'll tell you the truth after.
I like that.
In the end, he decides to fold. I don't mind this fold at all. I think against a lot of opponents, this is a good fold because players in my shoes don't try to represent this low board when they've represented high cards and high pairs pre-flop. I honestly think well played by Phil, given that he decided not to play more aggressively pre-flop. And good news for me that I take down my first pot.
Dr. Galfond hurting Phil Laak, star of I Bet You. Just hurt him, you know?
In this next hand, I get a chance to battle with the godfather of poker, Doyle Brunson. I open in middle position with Jack-7 suited, 2,500. He calls with 8-5 suited. We share diamonds, and we head to the flop.
Flush draw for both players.
They bluffed you, kid.
You got plenty
Feels
of
like he
hours
had
to
He
figure
didn't have a
out.
straight, I'll tell you that.
Bet 6,000.
Doyle bets his.
Just min, raise, and win. Just reach down and find your sack. I know it's hard, but you know it's there, right?
I like to do that when I have the 7.
Right.
Just 7, not 7-9. I don't need a 7-9 because it's a chopper on crush. He's going to have 7-9.
Galfond calls.
We both flop a flush draw on Queen 10-6 with 2 diamonds, and Doyle elects to lead into me for full pot, 6K. With Jack high diamonds, I just have a very easy call here. There's not much to think about, and we head to the turn where both of us make a flush.
Uh-oh. This could cost a chunk.
Bet 14,000.
14,000 to start with. Raised to 36,000.
Raised to 36.
Yeah, a hard hand to get away from.
Got a little action in this little high stakes poker season 9, huh?
It's definitely starting out strong.
The turn comes the ace of diamonds. Both of us turn our flush. This is looking very good for me. And Doyle continues betting 14,000 into 18.2 thousand. I think this is a good spot to just call because if he was bluffing again, he would have the opportunity to continue bluffing on the river. But at the time, I decided to raise to 36,000. I know that I was thinking a couple of things. I was thinking, first of all, I have a very loose aggressive image, which I've earned on my previous appearance on high stakes poker, as well as my online play. And second of all, I felt like he had something by this point in the hand. I thought maybe he flopped a set of 6s, maybe he had Queen 10, maybe even has Ace Queen, and I wanted to get more value. Of course, with the 8 high flush, Doyle's not going anywhere. He has a very easy call, and we head to the river.
Board pairs with queens.
Check.
The river queen pairs the board, and I am a little bit uncomfortable about this. Remember, I did put him on a hand like 6s or Queen 10, as well as, of course, some hands like the one he had. He could also have King Jack, by the way. He checks to me, and I think my hand is too strong. I need to value bet it. I size down a little bit to 54,000 into this 90K pot.
Pair did not scare Galfond. He bets 54,000.
Bet 54,000.
Come on.
54,000.
Doyle gives it some thought with the 8 high flush. I think he realizes he's only beating a bluff at this point, but he has 2 great blockers, and I think my image, especially given the last appearance on high stakes poker, has earned me a lot of calls.
Looks bad.
And call he does. And I take down a 190K pot. Things are looking pretty good so far.
That's true. You know, that's why I just said.
I mean, if you saw like his both,
Okay, no.
if you saw like both whole cards, and you couldn't really play the hand ethically, I feel
But
like.
then, What if I have aces? You know, maybe just go fold.
Well, no. You should play and then tell me.
Galfond with big slick raises to 2,500.
What'd you have, sevens, eights, or ace queen or ace king or something?
Oh, you're the worst.
Both blinds call.
It's early in the day, and I'm up 135,000 when I get involved in this next pot with ace king. I raise and get 2 callers, and we head to the king 8 deuce flop. Things are looking pretty good.
Yeah, until the river.
Best hand stays the best. Krog decides to represent the king and bets. Galfond plays along.
Robert Croak all of a sudden decides to lead 5,500 here with his ace 6. Now, I had not played much with Robert Croak before we became friendly during this filming, but I didn't have any reads at the time. I, with ace king on a very dry flop, don't feel like I need to raise here, and actually I'm a little bit afraid to raise because I feel like he's representing a polarized range of really good hands and some total bluffs, and occasionally some king, queen, king, jack hands, which I can make more money from later. So I just call, and we head to the turn.
Croak remains determined. He is drawing dead. And Galfond remains accommodating.
On the 5 of spades turn, which doesn't really change much, Croak bets again, 10,700 into this $19,300 pot. Ace king, still top pair, top kicker, still have the same feelings that I had on the flop. This is one of 3 categories: a very strong hand, a pretty strong hand that I'm beating, like king, queen, or king, jack, or a bluff. And given that the flop had no draws, the bluffs are often not going to have much equity. And so all of these things combined, I want to continue calling and head to the river.
Well, if at first you don't succeed, try again. One of the stupidest sayings ever.
4,800.
Galfond wastes a perfectly good raise.
The river's the offsuit 10, and Croak bets again, 15,800 into this $40,000 pot. Now, at this point, I'm pretty sure I have the best hand. His bet sizings have now made it look more like a thin bet with king jack, maybe even king 9. And I feel like I need to raise. I am admittedly a little bit spooked because I felt like his flop lead was more polarizing, but I think by this point in the hand, his bet sizes and all things combined, I feel like my hand is too strong to just call, so I elect to raise.
The Galfond Show, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, if you keep catching hands, it's easy.
Obviously, with his just ace high, he decides to fold, and I scoop another nice pot. In this next hand, I battle another legend, Johnny Chan.
Antonio, because then
It's been a tough month, boys. Don't be picking on me. I'm not in my best humor. Eric said I look like John.
See, I should have raised because I don't like this. There's too many people.
and this wizened older,
still in
old
position.
days.
Yeah, but now I feel like 1 in 4 chance of winning instead of 1 in 2.
4 to the flop.
That's a feeling you have.
Galfond hits top pair.
Oh, you're running.
Flush draw for Johnny Chan. Wheel draw for Croak.
4, 5, 6, 8.
What's 4, 5, 6, 8?
Phil Galfond robbed me.
Not Omaha.
On king 5-4 with 2 diamonds, I flop top pair good kicker, and it's checked around to me. Now, I decided to bet 4,000 into this pot of over 12,000, which at the time is very small for the situation, but is actually relatively close to theoretically correct sizing. I didn't know it at the time, and to be perfectly honest, I don't remember what I was thinking and why I sized this way. I think I wanted to induce some calls from very weak hands that were drawing very slim against me. I thought there were some loose players in the pot, and I might get some loose action if I made it small enough. Robert Croak calls with his gut shot, and Johnny Chan with his jack-high flush draw, of course, comes along as well.
Chan picks up more outs. Galfond pretty confident with his kings.
18,000.
Johnny's going to at least call.
Go.
The 9 of clubs hits the turn, bringing a second flush draw, and now when it's checked to me, I decide to size up. I bet 18,000 into this pot of almost 25,000. Here, I'm looking to get this street of value and protection. I think I have the best hand. Nobody raised me on the flop, which makes it very likely I had the best hand on the flop. So unless I ran into 9-9 or king-9 or occasionally a hand like 9-5 suited, which is going to be pretty rare, I still have the best hand on the turn. I like this bet for me, and I like the sizing. Croak folds his gut shot, and Johnny, now having turned second pair in addition to his flush draw, comes along with the call.
And there's a diamond.
$31,000.
31,000.
The river is the deuce of diamonds. Johnny makes his flush, and he actually leads into me for 31,000. This happens to be a great play against my hand because I would have checked back in this particular spot. And it puts me in a really uncomfortable situation. I thought about this one for quite a while.
Galfond is trying to figure out what he could beat.
I don't think this is how you play a very good hand, but I don't think it's how you play a bad hand either.
It's really hard for him to have air. But on the other hand, Johnny's a great player, and I think he knows it's really hard for him to have air in this spot. And so it is a situation where if he did show up with air, I do feel like he would be capable of bluffing here. So I had to think of the combos that make sense. There are hands like 6-8 of clubs. There are hands like some ace-high clubs, maybe ace-deuce of clubs that knows that the deuce is rarely good and wants to bluff this river. In the end, I decided to call with the pot odds I was being laid.
Flush.
8-6 of them.
Nice hand.
Well, now there is.
Nice hand.
Thank you.
I don't really like this call. I think it's just simply too hard for Johnny to have those few combos of bluffs and decide to bluff when he has them. But when he makes his flush, I think he's very often going to lead just like this. So don't like this call, and this is my first clear misstep, in my opinion, from this session. So next up is the most famous hand that I've ever played on high-stakes poker, and unfortunately, it's not for the reasons I would like it to be.
Back for more high-stakes poker. 2.1 million on the table, up for grabs.
Strado.
Mr. K is in the house.
Klein straddles again.
10,000, huh, Phil Galfond?
Not sure why you even look at your cards.
Raised 3,500.
It looks bad. If he doesn't look in the raises,
that's
then...
the part, yeah, that's the part that always gets me.
Yeah.
Why does he even bother looking?
Then you know that he doesn't know. This way
you think that,
there's a
that maybe
possibility
I'll
that he
look
actually
down
has
at
a hand.
a 7-4 and just fold it.
I don't think he looked at one card that time.
Bill Klein straddles to 1,600. I raise with Queen 10 offsuit to 3,500 and get called by Robert Croak's ace-jack suited and Bill Klein with 10-6 of spades. I think Croak could 3-bet this hand, but there's nothing wrong with the call. And I think, of course, 10-6 suited has to come along in the straddle.
Money there, so I can't really see much.
Something for everybody. Croak has top pair, Klein has a flush draw, and Galfond the open-ended straight draw.
5,500.
Klein raises with his flush draw. Galfond calls. I doubt Croak will re-raise.
Call.
Could be some interesting turn cards here.
We head to the flop of Jack 9 deuce with 2 spades, and once again, Robert Croak leads out, this time with the goods. He has top pair, top kicker. He bets 5,500, and Bill Klein next to act raises with his 10-eye flush draw to 17-5. Now, it's very important to note that I did not know Bill Klein at this time. We'd played a few hands. He hadn't gotten involved in many pots. I was making the population read that, he's an older gentleman and probably is going to be on the nittier side because most guys who were, a couple times my age at the time would play, well, a few times my age. I guess I was very young at this point. Play very nitty. It's just the reality. So I assumed that Bill Klein had a really big hand here. And normally when people have a big hand, you want to fold. But in this case, I have an open ender. I have 8 outs to beat a set. And I have great implied odds. So I decided to call here in position, hoping to stack Bill's set on a king or 8 turn. Robert Croak comes along as well with his ace jack, and we head to the turn.
You have to look at the flop first, or the turn.
There is an interesting turn card, and it's for Phil Galfond. He makes the nut straight. Klein continues betting his flush draw. Galfond is grabbing some serious ammo. $67,000.
Wow.
That sends Croak a message.
Guess I have to fold.
Klein doesn't know that if he hits his straight, he'll only chop the pot. Klein calls.
The dream king of clubs rolls off on the turn, and Bill Klein, with his perceived set, in my mind, leads out $28,000 into this $64,000 pot. I raise to $67,000, thinking I'm going to stack this set, and now facing this heavy action, Robert Croak gets out of the way. Klein, with his 10-high flush draw, once again comes along with the call. He happens to have picked up a gut shot as well.
Nearly a $200,000 pot now. A disappointing red card for Klein. Looks like Klein's creative juices may be flowing. They sure are. He bets $150,000.
The offsuit jack rolls off on the river, and I am not thrilled. I'm planning to check this back and just hope that I win. But before I get the chance to, Bill Klein leads out $150,000 into this $198,000 pot. If I call here, it would be nearly a $500,000 pot and the biggest pot that I'd played on high stakes poker. But to be perfectly honest with you, despite the fact that you are looking at Bill Klein's hand and he has 10 high, I did not consider calling. I wanted to give myself a second to think because it's a huge pot and it's a big spot, but I had it so ingrained in my mind that Bill Klein had a big hand on the flop, and I felt like it was a set. So sets make full houses here. He did lead, which makes perfect sense with a full house. And as I pointed out, I didn't know him. I didn't know how tough and aggressively he could play, which I obviously do now. And I thought he was just a nitty guy who had a full house. So I laid this one down. It was talked about in many places for years to come. I've reviewed this hand in interviews a couple of times. To be honest, there are hands that I look back on throughout my poker career that I beat myself up over. This is actually not one of them because I feel like with the information I had at the time, I made a great fold. It happened to be wrong.
Galfond falls for it.
That's him.
If you were bluffing, which...
Really...
Holy that's Bill.
Really
you are sick.
Whoa,
you're sick.
All right,
man.
Antonio, before even you are halfway through it, if you were bluffing, this would be a good time to show. Bill knew that. Bill knew the ropes. He was like, all right, this is a nice time to show.
All right,
150 with 10 high.
But there was a 9 out there.
There was a 9.
Yep.
That's the only reason it made me do it.
Holy
He knows.
Johnny Chan really had my number during this session. There were 2 more hands, one of which he had king queen in. One where I made a light call down that didn't work out, and the other where I passed on a river bluff spot that I probably should have taken.
Jack puts 4 to a straight up. Could slow Phil down. And he does give up.
Was he up?
Could have bet against that hand.
No, I'm coming.
At this point, my hot early start had cooled off quite a bit, and despite that, I was still feeling confident. I felt like I was playing pretty well. And then I get into this confrontation with Phil Laak.
Phil Laak with pocket 7s raises in the cutoff. Galfond re-raises in the small blind with 4-3 of spades. Laak calls.
He opens under the gun with pocket 7s, and I decided to 3-bet with 4-3 suited in middle position. Now, this is a light 3-bet, but this is the kind of hand I would rather play heads up, and I was loose aggressive.
Talented Phil versus Lucky Phil. Let's see who comes out ahead.
No, because of the money. 13,500.
Talented Phil bets 13,500. Laak says, talented or not, here I come.
Phil Laak calls, and we head to the 9-6-4 rainbow flop. I flop bottom pair, backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw. He checks to me. I bet 13,500. This is kind of a protection bet. It's not really a bluff. I don't think he's going to fold a better hand, but I can set up a bluff on future streets, or as it turns out, on this street. Phil Laak raises to 40,200, which with his actual hand, pocket sevens, I wasn't expecting. Now, what he's doing is he thinks his hand might be best, might not be, is probably best, and he just wants to end it right now with the raise. I generally don't like plays like this, but they work pretty well against weaker competition because you really do find out where you're at.
That's a 50.
I have around
100 more?
90 left.
Okay.
110.
In the moment, I actually remember this hand vividly because I thought, and I even made it obvious in the way that I was acting that I was thinking about whether or not he was bluffing. So in my mind, what was happening here is Phil either had a value hand that he was going with, or he was bluffing and he was going to fold to a jam. And I was deciding, do I jam, have some equity against his value hands, like a hand like ace-9 or pocket jacks or pocket queens, or make him fold out his bluffs, or do I just fold? I wasn't considering calling here because his bluffs are going to have too much equity, and I want to deny that equity. Now, I do have a backdoor straight draw and backdoor flush draw, as I mentioned, in addition to my bottom pair. So against those jacks, I would have decent equity.
I'm all in.
Welcome to High Stakes Poker.
God, that was beautiful.
If I couldn't see the cards, I would think this was set over set.
I'm probably beat.
It's sevens against fours, ladies and gentlemen.
I hemmed and hawed for a while, and in the end decided to shove, putting him on enough bluffs that this would be a profitable jam. Now, as it turned out, he was not bluffing, and now the decision was back to him, and he had a tough decision with pocket sevens.
Great time for a bluff, Phil. Great
Ace
time.
king? Felt like ace
Great
king.
time. Just like a blank 4 is cool.
Ace
Like a
king,
4
I
or
think.
5 or something.
I never imagined in this hand that I was bluffing him off of a better hand than mine. I thought I was just trying to deny equity. But as it turned out, he read my play as so much strength, which, to be fair, it usually is, that he laid down the pocket sevens, and I look like a genius with my bottom pair bluff.
Sorry.
God, I love Phil
So
Laak
much for
and,
trying to bluff Phil Galfond. So much for that.
Bluffing with him is
The chicanery continues.
At the end of this very swingy and fun session, I came out roughly even, which, if I look at my 3 appearances on High Stakes Poker, brings my total to negative 431,000. All in all, it didn't go great for me, but I had so much fun. It was so exciting for me to play on my favorite poker TV show with many of my poker heroes over the years, and I gained more and more confidence, and it shows in my play with each time that I appeared on the show.
I have a full house. Wow.
I'm proud of that, despite the fact that my results weren't quite there. This was the end of my run on High Stakes Poker. It was canceled soon after this, only to be brought back in more recent years. Now I haven't been on the new version of High Stakes Poker, but I hope to in the future, and they have my number.